I paid for Discovery Plus to watch all the ghost hunting shows, so you don't have to. Hopefully, I'll find something great. So after episode 1, a lot of people said, that show is ridiculous. You should cover one of the good paranormal shows. So today, I am covering a show that you guys told me was one of the better shows. And that show is Kindred Spirits. Never seen it, I'd never even heard of it. This show is described as calmer, more evidence, more respectful. So let's see if that holds up when I slow things down. But my question isn't, is this nicer than the other shows? The question is, how does it hold up in the eyes of somebody that's far more skeptical than the average viewer? Yes, I'm a believer, but I'm a skeptical believer. But I'm not a hater, I'm a debunker. So let's find out how this show went. So Kindred Spirits is a bit of a fan favourite, it seems, a show with a reputation for being calmer, more respectful, and apparently more evidence-driven. So I was looking forward to this one. And that makes it great for episode 2 because even some viewers of mine have said Kindred Spirits is a better show. So what I'm actually looking for in this is a higher standard. Right away from the opening, this show feels completely different. We're still getting the horror sort of lighting. We're still getting fog, and the atmosphere is dialed up a fair bit. It's not quite up to 11 though. And there are some differences, and one of them being that the clips from this episode that are shown at the beginning for the introduction seem to be from this episode. It's not like an amalgamation of high points from hundreds of episodes. It's not a greatest hits reel, there's no screaming, there's no running, and that alone is actually quite refreshing. There doesn't seem to be any chaos here, there's no manufactured panic, and it feels calmer. I did spot some familiar looking devices, but I'm just going to let that play out. And then we get the introduction of the 3 cast members, but there's no claims made about them. They don't say, like, psychic medium, paranormal investigator, tech wizard. There's no big titles, no dramatic credentials. In fact, it doesn't even say their names. And I was pretty sure when watching this that I recognised all 3 straight away. But it was kind of like the show isn't looking for an authority or looking into the past in some aspects, which I kind of liked. And we had cut to an exterior of the home. It's a beautiful home built in the 1830s. And then there comes a key phrase from the cast. Not that it is haunted. The actual wording they use is, but apparently very haunted. That may sound small, but in the paranormal field on television, that's huge. And language like that actually matters. So far, this episode is off to a much better start than episode 1. And then we quickly move on to the claims from the owners. They describe seeing a strange figure, a figure with no eyes, door handles jiggling by some unseen force, and hearing footsteps. And what's interesting here again is how it's presented. There's no exaggerated horror tropey B-roll. There's no screaming reenactments. And there's certainly no running down hallways or people getting chinned by ghosts. The show simply lets the claims sit on their own. But I did notice something else. In the introduction there were 3 people, and on the location there are only 2. So the third person isn't here, which is interesting. Maybe he's called in sick, or maybe something that's going to annoy me later on is going to happen. So at this point while watching, I was making a prediction with myself that this third person will show up and he is going to be a psychic medium. And he was the one I kind of recognised, but I wasn't sure where from. And I'm like, yeah, he's going to turn up, he's not going to know the property, he's not going to know the history. Kind of like I had my own psychic little gift going on there. Or maybe the formula doesn't change as much between these shows as I'd hoped. So we learn that the property is a bed and breakfast. And guests are actually no longer staying because of the haunting, because they're scared to stay there. And the owners actually live in the property, and that is obviously a bit of a problem. And so the team say that they are here to help. At this point, the 2 cast members have been walking around with the homeowners, and my only issue is I haven't been told their names, and I can't remember their names despite recognising them. We're not told what they do, we're not told who they are, there's no roles or introductions, and at this point I'm feeling like if you watch a random episode, I'm an outsider looking in. But that's a nitpick really. So we get an introduction to the actual homeowners. There's some creepy B-roll, but it's nothing over the top, there's no doors slamming and people running and screaming and things, no exaggerated reenactments which would really annoy me. And I'll say this show looks clean. Is it as polished as Hilton House is Haunted? Not quite. Is it far more digestible for me, a skeptic? So far, yes. It looks and sounds great. And the production here is genuinely really good. So the owners of the building tell us about the history of the property, and then more about the building itself, the work they've been doing there, things like that. And all of this is done without any interruption from the cast. The crew just listens. There was no sort of leading questions, no dramatic, no investigator telling them that's a dark entity. And then we head off on the tour of this beautiful, beautiful building. And so far, it's all really measured and respectful. And honestly, that was making me quite interested for what was going to happen for the rest of this episode. One homeowner tells us about these toolbox-like crashing sounds. The other talks about a shadow entity that's been spotted. And what's notable here for me was how the cast are responding to these claims. They do question the claims and they do try to get more information, but without forcing anything, without leading anything. They ask for sort of more clarification rather than confirmation. I'm pretty sure I recognise these two cast members, and I think they were from Taps. At this point, I'm like, I think that's Amy from Taps, and I don't know the guy's name, but I'm sure they were Taps. But again, the show doesn't tell me who they are. It's still a nitpick, but if you're not a fan, you're just expected to know who these people are, and I didn't really know. But that's not a deal breaker, that's more of a barrier for somebody just picking a random episode to jump onto a show to see if it's any good. We move around the property, we're hearing more about the experiences, and the crew are just inquisitive. They're not reacting theatrically, they're not, oh my god, in, and that sort of stuff. They're listening. There's also a discussion about iron nails that are on the door frames in certain areas of the house to ward off evil spirits. Again, there's no theatrics around this, there's no over-the-top B-roll or anything. The crew listen, question, and then move on to the next claim in the next room. That's kind of how folklore should be treated, right? You listen to the claims, you listen to the stories, and then you investigate those claims. And the score at this point had started to be a bit horror-tropey, horror-style music, and it was starting to get a little over the top. But at this point, I'm not rolling my eyes, which is fantastic. Because normally by now, my eyes are rolling so far into the back of my head, I can see my neck. We hear more about this eyeless shadow entity, shadow figure, and we're told that the experiences people have had with this shadow eyeless entity are recorded into a guest book. But we don't get to see the guest book. They don't film the guest book or photograph it and put an image up on screen, and that's a bit of a shame. And then the crew ask something, and it genuinely quite surprised me. They look at the homeowners, and they say, what would you like us to do? Not, we've come in to kick this ghost's ass. Not, we've come in to banish this ghost to the other realm. Just, how can we help? And the homeowners say they just want to understand what's going on because they have guests that are obviously getting scared and are leaving. It's costing them money. And then we cut to the start of the investigation, and the crew start off in the ballroom. And the reason they start in the ballroom is because that's the only room in this building that the homeowners have actually seen something. And that's a good call. The strongest claim from somebody that they've just interviewed in one room, and that's where they start. Great. So they start their investigation, and they say they're going to run some baseline tests, which is interesting. But when I'm listening to the language and the things they are saying, they say they're getting baseline tests to see who they're dealing with, not what. I know that sounds a bit nitpicky, but language like that kind of matters to me. They seem to be investigating a ghost off the bat and not potentially creaky floorboards, drafts, mold, spores, the usual sort of thing. At this point, they should be trying to rule out structural noises, environmental factors, carbon monoxide, because these are already now working with the assumption that it is a spirit. That doesn't immediately say to me that these guys are fake, but it does tell me where the boundaries are with this. They're priming themselves, they've already got their minds made up. So they set up a laser grid. Now, it doesn't matter if I believe in laser grids or not, but they set the laser grid up exactly where the homeowner has seen this shadow figure, and they leave a camera trained on it. They've explained why they're using it. It makes sense why they're using it in that area, and it makes sense within their own framework. And finally, when they're talking to each other, we get names. It's Amy and Adam, and that helps a lot because now I know it's Amy Brule from Taps and Adam, who was also in Taps, but I think they were later additions. The biggest criticism so far, and it's not that bad really considering I'm watching a paranormal show, is an outsider that's just dropping in onto an episode. You should have done this earlier so we know who you are. So they call in out, and then they hear a knocking sound. And then they immediately ask, what was that? Is it this wall? To me, it sounds like it's kind of coming from the building itself, possibly outside, not inside this room. And this room is, if you watch the episode, it's just wood paneling, floor to ceiling, everywhere. So, heating, contractions, cooling, wood is going to pop and crack. But that's not what it sounded like to me anyway. I mean, it looks fantastic, but it is absolutely terrible for paranormal investigations. Instead of them overreacting like, oh, did you hear that knock? Oh my god, dude, bro. They actually start trying to work out which wall it was. And they start knocking walls to see if they can recreate the same sound. They don't, but they try. And to me, that's what I would do. If I hear a knocking sound, I'm going to knock on the walls to see if I can replicate that sound. If I can't, then that sound didn't come from that room. Then we're told that they hear footsteps, but all honesty, and I watched this on the TV, I didn't have my earbuds in, I couldn't hear it over the sounds of the cast moving. Adam sort of moves in his chair and then leans forward with the camera, and I'm like, I can't hear anything here. Then I hear some form of creaking, which could be mistaken for walking, and then I hear a groan. They hear the groan and they move upstairs. They move to where they think this groan came from. Great. Going towards the sounds, even if it's not paranormal, and you're going to debunk it. They obviously think it's paranormal, and they're going to investigate. Has a ghost groaned? But still, they've gone towards the sound. Fantastic. It's logical for the context of what they have claimed. And Amy walks into an area where they've already been told that there's paranormal activity, and Amy says that she feels ooky. Ooky. Now, that could be experience, or that could be priming. But again, and quite importantly, really, it's not overplayed. She's like, oh, I feel a bit ooky, and there's a brief discussion, and then they move to the rooms they want to get to. Amy sits on a bed, she's about to do an EVP session, and then my heart sank because I spotted it. The dreaded DR60. If you don't know what a DR60 is, it's a Panasonic voice recorder, a dictaphone. But this thing was basically, it ceased production for being broken. There are rumours of it being recalled. It's an unshielded microphone on a very old digital system, and it picks up the internal components, and when there's no noise being made, it fills in noise itself with these horrible screaming sounds. Some people seem to think that this is the voice recorder of the dead. To me, it's a broken digital dictaphone. And it's also got one of the worst playback designs in the history of dictaphones. This thing sounds awful even with your own voice. So Amy sat in the bed, she's been doing this EVP session, and she says she feels off. If you've ever used a DR60, or you've ever seen somebody using a DR60 on investigations, you know what's coming. I know what's coming.
Alright, that should do it. End of session.
They hit playback, and then you hear it. Static, whooshing sounds, screaming sounds, bursts of distortion. Your own voice sounding absolutely awful. That's not the voices of the dead, that's the components. That's what these recorders do, that's what this recorder is known for, being broken. I'm not mocking anyone, that is factual. We hit the ad break, and surprisingly, I'm not checked out. Even with the introduction of the DR60, I'm not checked out. Maybe they just don't know any different. But I am starting to eye roll. And the reason that I'm eye rolling at this point is if you're an experienced investigator, you should know that this device has false positives or produces false positives. You as an investigator, you have to know the limitations of your equipment. You have to know the flaws in your equipment. And with the DR60, it is so flawed, you should completely discard it. You can't treat known artifacting, or you can't treat known issues with the device as evidence. That should be the standard. So Amy hits playback and then reacts to this screaming sound with, "What the f-?" And there's an issue with that. She's used this device before. Everyone's seen and heard it before. You hear that exact sound with everyone that's ever used this device in every location. So why is she so shocked? To their credit, on the playback, they say it's unintelligible. And yeah, That's the correct conclusion. Until the second burst of the playback, where Adam says, "It says I do." No, Adam. No. It didn't. It's it. And off those two bursts of god-awful noise from the broken DR60, that's it. That's enough. Amy and Adam are utterly convinced this house is 100% haunted. They say they've heard things, which we have seen them react to, and then they say they've seen things. When? What exactly did they see? Because we didn't see it. They didn't show them reacting to it. It's just a line that's thrown out there, and I was like, huh? Have I missed something? I even rewound the episode back, and I'm like, wait. So in regards to comparing this to the first episode that I've done, it's quieter, it's more polite, it's more measured. But here we are again. Different tone, same tropes. And this is where the show steps on the same rake that flicks up and smacks them in the face as Help My House is Haunted. Chip Coffey. Chip Coffey is a well-known psychic medium that has worked with some people that I find rather shady, Ryan Buell. And Chip Coffey is going to do a reading of the house remotely. And this to me is where the show went from, this ain't so bad, to, there's some things starting to annoy me here. And then, how? I don't believe in psychics at the best of times. But this? How exactly is somebody supposed to get a feel for a physical location psychically through a TV? Quick, somebody call the CIA. They've been trying to crack remote viewing since the Cold War. And the first thing that Chip says is a direct hit from something we heard earlier in the episode. And the crew looks shocked. I'm not. This, I'm sorry to say, is no different to what we've seen before. A psychic is claiming to have knowledge of a place that they've never seen, heard of, or been to before. But, logically, they're being guided by some form of context. This is about as absurd as Ian Lawman saying he has no idea where he's going while the sat-nav in his car is taking him to the location. Somebody input that address. And what this actually does for me as a viewer, as a skeptic, as a debunker, is shows there's no controls, there's no falsifiability, there's no way for them to be wrong now, because Chip has just backed up everything that the homeowners have said, because he's immediately aligned with the pre-existing claims through his TV. Once that door is opened for me, everything else is going to be completely framed by it. So when the DR60 stays, when certainty of what's going on creeps in, and when a remote psychic medium enters, then this becomes dodgy paranormal TV again. It just has better manners. Chip gets a second hit, and Chip's second hit is about modifications to the house, which the homeowners told us about earlier. I am shocked. Truly shocked. How does a psychic looking at a TV screen know that there has been modifications to brickwork? To push this further, house modifications are not exactly a small detail. Now, yeah, it's an old house. It's bound to have been worked on, extended, and rooms moved over time. But it's also like cold reading. This is going to be a bona fide direct hit, especially from a property built in the 1800s. A home that's built in the 1800s having renovations and changes and additions. That's not psychic insight. Probability. Then Chip says something that produces my biggest eye roll to this point. He claims that the ghost is arrogant, like it's saying, "Do you know who I am?" Probably not, Chip, because you're dialing it in from miles away through your TV. At this point, we are no longer gathering information. We are assigning personality traits to spirits. We're also assigning intent, ego, motivations, and once you start doing that, you're no longer investigating. And this is the same pattern that we've just seen in Help My House is Haunted 2 weeks ago. General statements, high probability details, and it all being treated like it's some form of revelation. It's not. The next plan for the investigators is to remove the iron nails from the door frames, because moving them may stir up some paranormal activity. Do I believe in that? Absolutely not. No. But testing a claim? Yeah, go for it. If claims are things like if you throw holy water at this wall, it shakes and bleeds, then throw holy water at it. That's an investigation technique. But unfortunately, the rest of the plan after removing the nails is where they completely lose me. They're not just removing the nails. They're going to remove the nails. Amy's going to walk around the house with the DR60, talking to the spirit to capture EVPs. And then they're going to put the nails back once Amy walks into a room on the top of the door frame, because they are going to trap the spirit. Oh, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? We've gone, in a matter of minutes, from a paranormal investigation to ghost herding. Amy walks around the house doing EVP sessions, trying to get the ghost to follow her. Adam stood downstairs with the most intense look ever. And again, Amy does some playbacks, and it's important that you as a viewer listen to that playback, because what does Amy's voice sound like? Distorted, warped, horrible. And that's a real living person speaking into that recorder. So then you have to ask yourself a question. If a human being speaking into the recorder sounds that bad, how do you get a clear EVP? I'm not nitpicking at this point. This is, if your baseline audio quality is so bad, you have already compromised the entire experiment. Bin the DR60 or sell them to other people on the internet, because people pay a lot of money for them. £1,000. Basically, any noise, any artifact in any distortion, you can interpret it whatever way you want, but it's meaningless, it's not evidence, it's noise. This show didn't need to be Scooby-Doo. It chose to be. And from here on in, this investigation isn't about is something happening here, it's the idea that something already is happening here. We get more EVP playback, and I'm not sure how else to describe this other than what sounds like a really loud fart. We hear this fart sound, and then Amy says, "I need help." And I had to pause for laughing there. It's like, I need help. And then we cut to Adam, who's doing this. He's so stern, and with the most serious look he can physically muster, says, "It's time. It's time." It reminded me of the scene with Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor where Chris Pratt is lowering his voice to sound more intense. And he gets called out for it. Great. And I made myself laugh because I'm like, great. They're going to be trapping the farts of the dead. Does anyone have any glade? They say the EVP said no. I say, no, it didn't. The ghost farted. And then the ad break lands. Thankfully, because at this point, Robbie Williams singing "It's Good to Be a Cat" is more enjoyable than the ghost farting that I've just watched. So with Scooby-Doo logic, we cut back from the adverts into the investigation, and they are absolutely convinced that they've trapped the ghost in Wynn's room. So they think they've got the spirit trapped, so they move around the house doing their experiments. Now, if they get any results, then it's not that they didn't trap the ghost, it's that the ghost has escaped. And if they don't get activity, congratulations! They've reinvented the Ghostbusters with a DR60 and some iron nails. Zedmore, Spengler, Stans, Venkman. Eat your heart out. Don't need proton packs, you don't need ghost traps. A DR60 and iron nails. Then we hear a bang. Adam hears it, Amy doesn't. Nobody goes to investigate it. Everything they were doing right at the beginning of the show has gone out of the window. And then something incredible happens. The EVP picks up another voice. They believe this is a different voice, which means there must be two ghosts. And apparently, from these weird gurgling, awful sounds of the DR60, these guys surmise that apparently one ghost was suppressing the other. It couldn't possibly be that the DR60 is a flawed piece of equipment and is just going to keep making these sounds. And then we are told that this bassy, distorted is a female. How long did this ghost smoke in the afterlife? Because she sounds rough. It's the same distorted audio from earlier. It's the same digitally recorded artifacts. It's the same recorder. Nothing has changed except their interpretation. End of story. I'll be honest, at this point, I was already reaching for the remote. And I'm already looking at my phone like, please somebody text me, please somebody ring me. Not because the episode is scary, but because it's exhausting to see them go through these mental gymnastics to spin this narrative. Just to be clear, this is still nowhere near as bad as Help My House is Haunted. No kids involved, there's no demons, there's no possession narratives, and they're not scaring the crap out of the homeowners. Yet. we hear more ghostly footsteps, or as I like to call them, old house settling sounds. And conveniently, these sounds are coming from the place where they trapped the ghost. So of course, they decide to confront the ghost. And they call this moment the come to Jesus moment. And I'm having my own fucking moment right now. And then this come to Jesus moment, out come the Ovulus, the REM pod, and the Flux. Ah, yeah. Ghost hunting toys. At this point, they've just dipped into the same bag of tricks of every YouTuber and every TV paranormal show. And Sam and Colby would be proud because then they produce the mag light trick. If you don't know what that is, you fiddle with a mag light until it's just on the cusp of being on and off. You set it to one side and the heating and cooling of the device blinks it on and off. Of course they did. But then, something spooky happens. The Ovulus stops working. It's not a device malfunction, it's the ghost. It's the ghost showing them what it can do. And that's really interesting, because when technology fails in any other circumstance other than ghost hunting, it's like, battery's died. That's broken. Gremlins. Outside of the paranormal world, this is what's commonly known as a fault. So the team then claim that they are not letting the ghost leave this room. And then Adam actually says the words, they've put the spirit on the naughty step. And he did it with a straight face. Nobody laughed. They're like, put the spirit on the naughty step. Time out for you, ghosty woasty. And then we move to the second day 2 of this investigation, and finally we get a history lesson. Can anyone say tonal whiplash? They look at the property deeds, and I can't help but think, shouldn't you have done that before you even went there? It's not like Chip is going to look at him, is it? He's miles away. They also decide that on the second investigation later on that night, they're letting the ghost out. Okay. So we kind of back in the ballroom, and Amy suddenly says she sees a figure. Exactly where the homeowners saw one. Oh no, we don't see it because the cameraman is conveniently pointing that way at Amy, not that way where she is looking. I'm not accusing anyone, just an observation. And then more devices come out. The K2, the Flux, the music changes. It's all getting darker, more haunty. Haunty, that's a word now. And then the SLS camera is produced, and it's being handheld, so dismiss that stick figure immediately. It's not a person in a doorway, Adam. That's an anomaly created by the broken tech. It wasn't broken until you started moving it in your hand. And also at this point, I'm like, have they lost their luggage? Did they not pack enough clothes? Because this is day 2, and they're wearing the same clothes, aren't they? Now, I'm not saying that this is one night being portrayed as 2 and eventually 3, and I'm definitely not saying that they stink, but this kind of feels like a continuity choice. But I don't think it was. So the equipment suddenly doesn't trigger anymore, and the explanation is, ghosts can only fire off in quick bursts. Right. Haven't you forgotten something? Didn't you trap the flatulent spirit yesterday in a bedroom? Thankfully, Robin Williams is back, and he's singing about cool to be a cat. I can't believe that awful advert is a welcomed break. Sing it, Robbie. It's cool to be a cat. The duo then decide to let the spirit out. Don't bother. It's already out. You literally caught this stick figure downstairs. He was setting off devices the day before. Or you forgot that you'd apparently locked it in a room. I know this house is said to have had multiple spirits, but I am focusing on their focus. They take the iron spikes down and they give a very stern lecture to the spirit about respect. And at this point, I am belly laughing in my living room. Mostly because Adam sounds like one of those supply teachers that the kids pick on. It's like he's trying to get order and nobody's listening to him. He looks like he's going to go in the stock room to have a quick smoke and a cry. And then we've treated to an Estes session. Sorry, it's a Frank session. Why is this called a Frank session for these guys? What happened to the Estes session? And isn't it amazing how Adam has got these headphones on and we hear nothing? We don't hear the... We don't hear any high-pitched tones that you would expect to hear with cameras and microphones in a room made of wood. And then Adam starts receiving some clear multi-word messages. In fact, he receives far too many words and far too many messages. in my opinion. I've done the Estes session, I've used spirit boxes. I've never seen anyone get full sentences. That's my opinion, because I've been around these experiments, I've performed these experiments, and that's not how they work. I've done it myself, and I've heard fragments of words, 1 or 2 every now and again, and 9 times out of 10, you know it's coming from a radio station. And then for some reason, Amy removes her shoes to leave the room, so Adam can't hear her. Now isn't that interesting? Because Adam has got headphones on and a blindfold. He's being blasted with white noise and the odd random radio signal. Maybe it's so he doesn't feel the vibrations, but she's walking away from him, not towards him at this point. Amy places the nails next to Adam, and Adam says he feels somebody next to him. And he rips off the blindfold, and then Amy tells Adam what's just happened. And she completely cocks it up and gets it wrong. She says communication had stopped when she placed the nails by Adam. It didn't. It stopped when Adam stopped the session himself. He ripped the blindfold off and ripped the headphones off. Adam says something like, oh yeah, we told the entity to back off. And again, much like the spirit that they saw earlier on, I'm like, when? I didn't hear that. Cut to the next day, Amy and Adam, they're wearing jackets in the daytime with the homeowners present, after roaming around the house all night the night previously in t-shirts. Can't be certain, but I think this is the same day, and they've put jackets on to hide the fact they've been wearing their clothes for apparently 3 days. They sit with the homeowners and they say, yep, your house is haunted. And they use the term like a haunted mansion, but worse. Apparently they experienced a lot of activity, and I'm sat there like, did they? They had a broken recorder and a few false positives. Somebody stole their clothes, and then they play back the DR60 to the homeowners, and the homeowners physically jump at the burst of static. Bravo, congratulations, Adam and Amy, you've scared the homeowners, just like Help My House is Haunted did. Amy explains the usage of the SLS camera poorly, she clearly doesn't understand it. The owners somehow buy into the whole nails on the doorframe trapping a ghost in a room idea, and just like that, the house is safe. What? Oh no, sorry, Amy comes up with an idea to take the nails outside the house and put them on 4 corners of the house, therefore stopping the ghosts getting into the house, but they're already in there, so she's effectively locked them in if we go off her logic. And the owners fall for it, and they believe it, because apparently intention is all you need these days. And that, Beardos, Weirdos, Balls and Ghouls, is how you turn uncertainty into belief. Okay, so the show started responsibly, it listened more, it escalated slower, but still broken tech to drive narratives. Rituals are replacing controls. There's logic bent numerous times to protect the narrative. And there's frightened people left with uncertainty and not any clarity. To me, this is paranormal polite theatre. And that's why it's effective, I guess. So to wrap up, Kindred Spirits is shot well. It looks nice. It sounds good. The people are far more polite. But compared to Help My House is Haunted, this is actually less polished in the way it looks. Visuals 3 stars, audio 3 stars. It's solid, but it doesn't have the same sort of cinematic impact of Help My House is Haunted, which I'm sad to say is shot much better. The investigation itself, 1 star. Just one above the 0 I give Help My House is Haunted, because these guys still scared the homeowners, but there were no kids involved. And to be honest, at least their flawed methods were aimed at specific claims. Whereas Help My House is Haunted had very specific claims and didn't investigate any of them, they just did random crap. But the moment a DR60 is produced, the moment an SLS camera comes out, I'm done, I've checked out. So it was a decent premise, there was a good setup, and the entire thing was undermined by Chip Coffey, remote viewing through his TV, the ghost hunting toys, and then the constant inconsistencies in their own narrative and story. Ruined it. At some point this show sort of went from investigation to improvisation. And this is where I have an issue now with this show, because I think this show is lying to their audience as well as the homeowners. Do I believe they wore the same clothes for 3 days straight, or took the same clothes, or at least the same looking clothes, and then after walking around all night in t-shirts, wear coats the next day? Absolutely not. I think this was all filmed in 1 day. Now, this was a step up from Help My House is Haunted. There was no demons, but they did scare the homeowners, but not quite as bad. It's still unforgivable. And at least there were no children traumatized this time. So overall, I'll give this half a star. And the worrying part? This is one of the better rated shows on Discovery Plus. This is the one that some of my viewers said I might enjoy. So I do have to ask, How bad do these shows get?